Okay, I know you guys feel a little anxious about this test, but there's really just two different kinds of questions on here. There's questions that have four pieces, like the one I've already written down. When you have four pieces, you do grouping. So like I said, there's really just two kinds of questions I put on this test. I've already written it. I know what it's like. There's questions that have four pieces or four terms like this. Those you factor by grouping. The other kind, which we'll do, has three pieces. Those are quadratic trinomials, so that's where you try to multiply to be the last number and add up to the middle number. So I'm going to go through all these so you guys can follow along and make sure you understand what's going on. So I know I assigned 39 and 40 in the assignments. Ignore them. Don't worry about them. There's nothing like 39 or 40 on the test. There were some like that on your quiz, but I've learned my lesson. I didn't put anything like that on the test. So let's start with 42. We want to pair these in twos. Okay, now this is a negative, so what I'm going to do is put parentheses around it, but a plus in between, because that minus only applies to this term. If I put a minus out in front of the parentheses, that implies this is also negative. We don't want to do that. So if there's a negative right there, put the parenthesis around it, put a plus in between the two. So I look here and look to see what these two have in common. There's no number they have in common other than 1, but they do both have an x, so I can pull an x out front. So that leaves the 2, and I take one of the x's away, leaving just 2x. That leaves the 3, takes the x away, so all that's left is the z. Now, because this one has a negative, I do want to factor out a -1. So I'm going to write a -1 right here. And they do both have a y in common. So I'll put -1y out front. Now, if you want to write plus -1y, you can, but it's the same as you say -1y. So again, because the first term was negative, I pulled out a -1. So that changes this to a +2, changes this to a -3. And you'll see why that's a good thing in just a moment. So I'm just going to say it again. If the first term in a group or in a pair is negative, pull out a -1. That'll change the signs of both of these. Okay, so we took away the y, so now all that's left is the 2 and the x. We took away this y, so all that's left is the 3 and the z. So the good thing about us factoring out that -1 is now these two pieces match. So I can pull 2x minus 3z out front, leaving me with x minus y. If you want to write 1y, that's fine, but you don't have to. You can write it as y or 1y. And if you have these in different order, like if you have x minus y first, this one second, that's completely fine. It makes no difference. Okay, 44 is 24ab plus 54a minus 20b minus 45. So we'll pair them up again. I'm going to plus here and put those both in parentheses because we want to do that anytime there's a negative out front. So we got to think, what's the biggest number that would go into both 24 and 54? Okay, 24 doesn't go into 54, neither does 12, neither does 8, 6. 6 goes into both of those because 6 times 9 is 54, 6 times 4 is 24. So 6 is the number, and they both have an a in common, so I'll pull that out front. 24 divided by 6 is 4. The a goes away, so we're just left with the b. 54 divided by 6 is 9, and we pulled out its a, so it's all done. Now on this one, we still want to look for what number, the big number they both have in common, which is 5, but we're going to pull out a -5, because we don't want these two terms to be negative, we want them to be positive like these two are. So that's why we pull out a -5. So 20 divided by 5 is 4. Leave the b. 45 divided by 5 is 9. And again, these went from being negative terms to positive terms because we factored out a -5. So I really should have said -20 divided by -5, +4. -45 divided by -5 is +9. So they both have 4b plus 9. I can pull that out front. That leaves us with 6a minus 5. Okay, 46, there's nothing like that on the test, so we'll just ignore it. We won't worry about 48 either, nothing like that on the test. So let's skip to 50. So from here on, we're doing the quadratic trinomials, meaning the things with 3 terms. So we say, all right, what multiplies to be 20? And adds up to 9. Now you don't have to list all of these. I did that just so you know it's okay if your first guess isn't right. If you can see right away, oh, that's going to be 4 and 5, that's great. You can just skip right to that. Then you would say x plus 4, x plus 5. And you're done. Because 4 and 5 multiply to be 20 and add up to 9. X squared plus 3x minus 18. We want to see what multiplies to be negative 18 and adds up to 3. So keep in mind, since this is negative, we'll need one positive and one negative, and the bigger number should be positive. This sign tells you the sign of the bigger of the two numbers. So I'll just jump to the correct one, which is going to be a positive 6 and a negative 3. So we would factor this to be x plus 6, x minus 3. Now you don't have to check your work, but you can check your work because if you FOIL, you should get back right what you started with. Okay, this time we're trying to figure out what multiplies to be 8 and adds up to negative 6. So since it's a positive 8, adding up to a negative 6, we need both of the numbers to be negative. So like negative 8 and negative 1, they multiply to be positive 8, but they add up to negative 9, so that one doesn't work. But negative 4 and negative 2, they do multiply to be 8, positive 8, but they add up to negative 6. So there's our answer. So we'll do x minus 4, x minus 2. $56, x squared minus 2x minus 48. So we want something that multiplies to be negative 48, meaning we'll have to have one positive and one negative, and adds up to a negative 2, which means we'll need the bigger one to be negative. So I could try like negative 12 and 4. That adds up to negative 8. Try negative 8 and positive 6. There we go. That's what adds up to negative 2. So we have x minus 8, x plus 2. Not going to worry about 58 actually. Nothing like that on the test. Number 60. Okay, now this is still a quadratic polynomial, but remember we have a few extra steps because we got to do the bottoms up method. But one thing I've been forgetting to check is the very first rule of factoring. Is there anything that all of these have in common? If so, pull that out first. So there's nothing all these have in common, so we can just keep moving along. So this is where, when there's a number in front of the squared, because if you look at every one I've done so far that was quadratic, trinomial, this was just x squared, just x squared, just x squared, just x squared. But then those dirty math teachers, they put a 2 in front. So we've got to do 2 times 3, which is 6. So we want to find out what will multiply to be 6 and add up to negative 9. So we need them both to be negative. So negative 6, negative 1 gives us negative 7. -2, -3 gives us -5. Huh. So nothing that multiplies by +6 adds up to a -9. So that means this is prime or not factorable. You can write whichever one you prefer. Prime or not factorable. Okay, 62. 2a squared plus 13a minus 24. 2 times -24 is -48. So since it's negative, we need a positive and a negative. And we want the bigger one to be positive because that's a positive right there. So I try +48, -1. That adds up to +47. No good. +24, -2 adds up to 22. No good. 16 and -3. There we are. 16 and -3 do multiply to -48 and add up to 13. So we'll start by writing a plus 16, a minus 3. Then remember, we tried to hide that 2 by multiplying it into the 24, but it's coming back trying to divide and conquer. So this 16 over 2 comes out even to just 8. But this one we cannot reduce it, so the bottom has to come up. '64, we'll follow the same process. 2x squared minus 3x minus 20. So we try to hide this 2 away because it's a pain. We say 2 times -20 is -40. So we want something to multiply to be -40. So one has to be positive, one has to be negative, and the bigger one will be negative because that one's negative. So I'll go ahead and tell you it's going to be -8 and +5. That adds up to -3 like we want it to. So we'll do x minus 8, x plus 5. And just another reminder, it does not matter which order you put these in. If you put x plus 5 first and x minus 8 second, that's completely fine. Then we divide both by 2, because that 2 we tried to hide in with the 20 to make the 40 is coming back, trying to divide and conquer us. 8 divided by 2 is 4. This 2 comes up, because we can't reduce it. It makes it, we bring the bottom up, and it becomes 2x plus 5. Okay, 66. We have 6x squared minus 7x minus 5. Okay, so we want to get rid of the 6 because it's a pain. 6 times 5 then is -30. So we want something that multiplies by -30. That means one positive and one negative. Adds up to -7. So the bigger one needs to be negative. So -30 and 1 gives us -29. No good. But -10 and 3 do give us what we need. So we get x minus 10 and x plus 3. Okay, this is a good example because there are times where you have to reduce the fraction before you do anything. And this is a good example of that. So we still have to divide both of these by 6. But we can't just bring the bottom up right now. We have to reduce these fractions first. So 10 over 6 reduces to 5 over 3. 3 over 6 reduces to 1 over 2. So before you bring the bottom up, you must remember to reduce the fraction. So on this one, the 3 comes up, giving us 3x minus 5. On this one, the 2 comes up, giving us 2x plus 1. Man, well, there's more good news for you. When I was first planning, we were going to have done section 8.7 before the test, but we didn't. So you don't have to worry about numbers 68 through 80 at all. We are going to go over those after this test, but there's nothing like that on the test. So if you're good through number 66, you are good to go. Good luck. I hope to see you tomorrow.